can read this. Dharmesh, you can read, or anybody can read that.
Okay, yeah, I'll read it. In today's book reading, we'll read the book written by Shri Raghavendra Rao titled A Panoramic View of Sahaj Marg. Publisher's note: Man longs to travel back to his original home and tread again that ancient path, yet he is bewildered and has become a shuttle. The desire to seek the reality is there, but the track is not clear before him due to various problems of life, of philosophy, of religion, of material sciences, and above all, of spiritual institutions. We have pleasure to present this book, A Panoramic View of Sahaj Marg by Shri Raghavendra Rao, to readers on the 76th birthday of the Master. The author of the book is an engineer by profession, but a Rajyogi by practice. In his personality, we find the rare and beautiful blending of science and philosophy. This blending is Master's masterly work. His transformation is a living example of the efficacy of the system of Sahaj Marg. In his spirit of surrender to the Master, his style too has become like his. We hope the treatise will be of great help to all those intellectuals who crave for reality but are otherwise confused due to modern thought and way of life. The book offers solution to many of the long-standing problems of man. Superintendent Publications Department, Shri Ramchandra Mission. Preface. Sahaj Marg's system of yogic sadhana has steadily marched on from success to success during a brief span of the last 25 and odd years, and promises to be the herald of a new human civilization in the history of the evolution of the whole man. It has adjusted the perennial essence of the age-old wisdom of the traditional Indian sage to the demands of the new era of scientific and technological advancement. It has thereby spelled out the fundamentals of a faith for the faithless future of enlightened humanity to live with and to bank upon in its journey through the arid deserts of prosperous intellectualism. The system has been nurtured and prepared for that task by the single-handed efforts of the founder, Shri Babuji Maharaj, in a short period of about a quarter of a century. He has given expression to the system through the work of his tongue and pen, and has chiseled out individuals to fulfill the task through the work of his heart and mind, constantly in touch with the center of the being at the root. His undertakings and the ways of their implementation are indeed marvelous and beyond the reach of the ordinary means of human comprehension and expression. And behind all his work, his person, essentially the wonder of wonders, eludes the grasp of all immensity and gets readily imprisoned in the clasp of every inarticulate innocence. Sri Raghavendra Rao is one of the best creations of that master, craftsman of human personality, and the present volume is the expression of the same piece of the master's creative human engineering. As such, this work is one of the best manifestations of the essence of Sahaj Marg by way of explication and evaluation. The author's style of thought and writing, closely approaching that of the master, is indicative of the degree of his identification with the source of their system. Through surrender to the same, which remains the only sure way to comprehending that which defies all comprehension. His brief and to the point explanations of the essential features of Sahaj Marg of yogic sadhana as expressions of his dedication and attachment to the cause of the master have a direct and effective appeal to the seekers after the goal, inside and even outside the fold of the abhyasis of this system of sadhana. The search after reality remains an eternal quest for mankind, consciously or unconsciously. Science, philosophy, and religion are the outcome of that inner longing and the realization of the absolute by whatever name we may care to designate it. As ingrained in the very essence of the existence of the human self, there can be no restrictions of special qualifications for launching on the quest for which nature itself has prepared and qualified man. But as in the case of any system of education, a certain force of training and equipment may be useful by way of saving the potential aspirant a lot of initial trial and error that may and does lead one into wilderness and blind alleys. Such a course of training, in case of the subject matter of the basic longing of the human psyche, has been discovered by the age old wisdom of the Indian seers. It has been known as yoga, which, however, in the course of history has suffered lot of mystifications and complications at the hands of painstaking scholasticism and gullible self-seeking. The founder of the system of Sahaj Marg Sadhana in the modern era of the history of human civilization has restored yoga to its pristine purity and adjusted it to the needs of the modern man. We confidently hope that this volume by Shri Raghavendra Rao is to serve as a valuable tool of effective communication of the Master's message to large sections of humanity inclined to undertake and benefit from the course of training designed to harmonize the human individual to the essential source of his being and becoming. Shri S.P. Srivastava. Introduction. I have been contributing essays for publication in our magazine Sahaj Marg. Some of my well-wishers suggested to me to compile all of my essays and to edit them in the form of a book. Some other associates exhorted me to write a book to explain the theory and practice of Sahaj Marg in my own way. As I am a preceptor in Shri Ramachandra Mission, I considered it more desirable to explain the subject in a compact way than to compile my stray articles on it. Hence this attempt. A book have appeared on this subject by no less persons than the President and some preceptors of Shri Ramachandra Mission. The literature is developing slowly. It is necessary for the preceptors who can do so to develop it still more. With this feeling of duty, I am writing this book. I hope other preceptors also will join the fray. My master took great interest in an unworthy being like me and worked hard in transforming me into the form of his liking. Out of my intense desire to share my joy with others, I have taken up this work. I shall consider myself still more fortunate if some of my fellow beings get inclined to transform themselves after going through these pages. I pray to Master to give me sufficient strength and courage to explain the theory and the methods of his teachings in the form of Sahaj Marg, and thus to serve his mission. I am grateful to my spiritual brother, Dr. S.P. Srivastava, MA, PhD, Head of Department of Philosophy, YD College, Lakhimpur Kheri, UP, for having kindly consented to write a preface on this book.
Dharmesh, I will read this. You take rest. First article. There about a small book, but towards the end, when it comes to role of preceptor, role of master, role of abhyasi. There are extremely valuable points are there which are not present in other literature. But first two, three are more of a philosophical nature. Yeah. Dharmesh, I'll read this now. The first chapter is called The Struggle of Man. Life has got the tendency to grow. Growth involves struggle. The struggle for growth is more evident in man. When man becomes too much conscious of the struggle, he feels pain and misery. Many a time the idea of growth vanishes from view and only the struggle remains for his lot. Desires take the place of the idea of growth. They too degenerate to the extent of immediate gratification of the senses of touch, taste, smell, sight, and audition. In this state, man is no better than an animal. In fact, he will be worse than an animal because he starts using his superior faculties merely for the gratification of animal-like cravings. Some persons are of the opinion that there will be an end of all struggle if the primary functions of life, namely hunger, sleep, freedom from fear, and sexual urges, are adequately satisfied. In other words, the very goal of life for them is just to fulfill their bellies, get ample sleep, to be rid of all fear, and satisfy their sexual itching. All their struggle is directed towards the fulfillment of these necessities only. On a closer examination, a good thinking animal, that is, a sane man, comes to the conclusion that this is also just animality, and that even after the satisfaction of his animal cravings, the struggle in man continues still further. It becomes necessary to clearly understand the nature of the struggle going on in man. As every man is aware, there is an animal in man, and also there is something greater than it. Man finds out this by his thinking. Sometimes the animal in him becomes stronger, and some other times the other aspect in him becomes stronger. So long as his animal aspect is stronger, his pain and misery due to his struggle is cruder and grosser. In such a condition, his struggle will be directed either for gaining power to compete with and subdue his fellow beings, or for the gratification of sexual urges or carnal appetites. This will appear to be a never-ending problem with the consequent experience of never-ending miseries and sorrows. When the superior aspect in man takes the upper hand, the struggle in him is directed towards a higher evolution with consequent experience of a different kind of pain and misery, which is at once sweet, ennobling, and subtle. Therefore, the struggle in man can be said to be either physical or spiritual. Happier and nobler is he who opts for the spiritual. By opting for the spiritual struggle, it should not be presumed that one gets at the end of all physical struggle. The mathematics is not that simple. It is extremely difficult to draw the line of demarcation between the physical and spiritual. The spiritual, in fact, pervades the entire physical existence. Therefore, a constant watch or alertness has to be developed in man to keep his thought attached with the essence of spirit. This is important. He's telling you therefore a constant watch or alertness has to be developed in man to keep his thought attached with the essence of the spirit. Attempts have been made to negate one for the sake of another in man's zest to arrive at the unifying principle. Nevertheless, the fact of duality remains as it is in spite of all the unitary or non-dualistic theories. Better to face both than to attempt to run away from either one. The struggle lies firstly in the process of the integration of the spirit and matter, and secondly in the subjugating the material centers to the spiritual ones, and thirdly in making the spirit to soar high in the realm of its infinite existence. I'll stop here for some time. Any comments so far? General philosophy is talking. Yeah, I'll continue. There is some secret awareness in man of his being perfect, immortal, infinite, in short, divine. At the same time, he is painfully conscious of his imperfectness, incapacity, and impotency at every step. The struggle goes on to regain his lost kingdom. The secret sense of his being divine is so subtle and also so vague that he clings passionately to the more evident and painful sense of his incapacity and impotency and comes to grief. The basic cause for the sense of his impotency is his inability to fulfill all his desires. Normally, he does not go deep to apprehend the basic cause of his desires. In every attempt or struggle to fulfill his desires, he adds one more barrier or obstruction for his inner divinity to come out. If only he introduces in his heart a conscious desire to regain his original state, all other desires will fade out and his struggle will be correctly directed to realize the divinity. In his commentary on the 10 Commandments of Sahaj Marg, Shri Ramchandra Ji has explained the facts of the inner struggle and the consequent formations of man, especially the struggle in man, while explaining the commandment number 4. The different faculties which have become very powerful start to drag man hither and thither, and consequently he falls a prey to the things of his own making. Man is nothing but a network of his own thoughts. Made powerful by his own constant brooding over innumerable things, forgetting his real nature. He goes on adding thread after thread in this network and gets entrapped in it. The reality gets completely hidden in it. The original point becomes like a silkworm in the cocoon. Therefore, it must be clearly impressed upon the heart that all struggle is and should be to grow into the life divine. The struggle should be given an evolutionary trend. Evolution necessarily involves getting rid of the previous formations which have got a strong tendency to retain themselves. Man's evolution is not a formation of yet another form, but it is something internal. It is in fact the evolution, or rather the unfoldment of the great spirit within him. The very fact that he has evolved into a man should be sufficient to convince him that this struggle should be for the realization of his ultimate essence. Once this happens, the nature of the struggle of man is transformed. It can then justly be called a healthy struggle. Each effort of man takes him to a brighter region and gradually enters that realm which can be described as the kingdom of God. In fact, that is man's real home. Even there, the struggle should be continued as long as man retains his consciousness. The region is an infinite ocean indeed. That's the thing. So somebody else can read the second chapter. The first chapter is very clear. He's telling that it's worthwhile to struggle for spiritual evolution and to reach your homeland or the kingdom of divine. So, and he says very clear in his thing.
I can read.
Yeah, Prasad, you can.
Of material sciences. Man's quest to know the causes behind the material phenomena has resulted in the development of different sciences. These are again classified as natural sciences, metaphysics, philosophies, etc. Each of the sciences has developed immensely, and it is not possible for a man to master even one science in his whole lifetime. The basis of the natural sciences is the observation of the natural phenomena, reasoning on certain axiomatic assumptions, and formulation of theories to explain the observed phenomena. These theories, in turn, take the forms of statements of natural laws if they are capable of predicting the happenings. The axiomatic assumptions have changed from time to time in the history of mankind, and new assumptions have taken the place of old ones. If the intellectual quest of man has produced the sciences, His physical needs were also irresistible in compelling him to develop the utilitarian aspects of the sciences. Thus, there is once again the classifications of pure sciences and applied sciences. In modern times, it is almost impossible to differentiate between the pure and applied sciences because of the pragmatic nature of the very science itself. In fact, the development of any science depends upon its utility. The rapid growth of material sciences has no doubt contributed much towards man's becoming more and more materialistic. Due to the irony of fate, the growth in the materialistic tendencies of man has been much more rapid than the development of sciences. Therefore, the struggle for the growth of science and technology has intensified greatly. Here, again, the axiomatic assumptions have started their play in confusing the already confounded mind of man. The very tendencies of superstitions against which the scientific spirit rose in revolt have produced some scientific superstitions, which are too dangerous to touch. Even pseudosciences have put on the garb of respectability and are parading in the streets. It had happened so previously and is happening so now too. The proper disciplines necessary to learn and get proficiency in any branch of science have gone with the winds. Science has become too dependent on unscientific things. Many eminent scientists and philosophers have expressed their views about the limitations of science. In every branch of scientific thought, finally one comes across a wall where logic and reasoning utterly fail, and he has to pray or patiently wait for light. In science, one endeavors to discover not only the causal relationships between the sequential happenings, but also the very ultimate cause itself. And according to the intuitive knowledge of everyone, the ultimate cause is something beyond materiality. The natural sciences fear to trade the realm where the measuring scales cannot operate. It is only the pseudoscientists who declare more unscientifically that there is nothing beyond matter and stubbornly refuse to recognize the spirit which is beyond matter, even if its influence shines as bright as sun. The present day condition of science has made it such that it can expand only horizontally, and that too whenever they happen to catch a reflected glimpse of the spirit in the matter. The principles of uncertainty, the theories of probability, the assumptions of matter to be the mother tincture of life, etc., have almost blocked the progress of science into higher regions. The discovery of vast sources of energy and their possible uses for destruction and the so-called material development have added to the retardation of scientific inquiry into the realms of above the matter. It is necessary to remove the spirit of scientific inquiry from its present day shackles so that it may soar higher and higher to subserve and fulfill the spiritual aspiration in man. Of course, the age of quarrels between science and religion has passed, yet the agnostic and atheistic tendency still persists in the natural science. By all means, let science attempt to catch the ultimate truth, but no science can progress towards that end by denying the very existence of the ultimate truth. Some sciences put a full stop to all their higher attempts by designating the ultimate as an unattainable ideal and start spreading their own special superstitions. As has been already stated, the basis of modern science is observation and reasoning. Here again, stress has been laid on the dispassionate, unbiased, and unprejudiced mind in order to arrive at the truth. This trace has been the result of revolt against the dogmatism and authoritarianism of religions. But unfortunately, science itself has now adopted the dogmatism and authoritarianism, thus shelving its very spirit of dispassionateness, unbiasedness, and unprejudiced attitude. Even in this field also, the eminent scientists like Darwin and Einstein, who came to be worshipped as gods, were ridiculed and persecuted when they attempted to put forth new theories. Conservatism and sense of security under benevolent authority appear to be common both for science and religion. New gods have taken place of the old ones. No scientist can dare to talk of old gods. In order to appear respectable, the old gods necessarily have put on the new garments and new names too. The writer has actually come across some pseudoscientists who were profitably selling occultism merely by using the modern scientific jargon profusely. On a closer examination, it could be known that each scientific term which they used had an entirely different meaning from its normally accepted sense. Of course, this kind of twisting and torturing of science should never be tolerated. Better to remain an atheist than to fall a prey to the dethroned gods. A bold attempt is needed to be made by the present day scientists to enforce the disciplines required to arrive at the truth. People must be taught to respect science for its spirit of inquiry and discipline, and not for the destruction of the enemies and increase in their luxuries which it is supposed to promise. The theories of sciences must be changed to ennoble man. The prejudice against the higher nature of man, that is his divine nature, must be dropped.
Second
Yeah.
end of the chapter. The thing is, the modern day science is totally materialistic one. That means they have become so dogmatic that science is a thing, you can do science on a thing where you can quantify or measure anything. So suppose you quantify the weight or the mass or the acceleration, anything which can be measured comes under the purview of science. And suppose my thoughts and feelings are there, they cannot be measured or weighed. So it doesn't come under the purview of science. So they are very dogmatic, saying that spirituality, that means the thoughts and feelings cannot be studied because they cannot be measured. So that's a dogma which has prevented spiritual evolution of man, actually. So unless that prejudice, scientific spirit means inquiring about the truth, trying to learn about your nature of mind, how it is changing. Suddenly, one moment you are happy, second moment you are extremely unhappy. I know a few days back you are happy, now you are unhappy. It's why is uncertainty? Whether there is a certain, whether it's possible for mind to be stable and steady irrespective of the changed circumstances, whether it is possible or not, they are not willing to inquire because it cannot be measured. So unless the dogma is given up, you are willing to approach the divine nature of man with the spirit of inquiry and honesty, it's not possible. That's the point is raised in this second article.
And maybe he's referring to Darwin and Einstein.
Darwin were all brilliant. I mean, it's very close to reality. Darwin and Einstein, actually. Now Darwin's view about psychology is now much more influential than Freud or Jung and all that. So now everything about evolutionary psychology can be explained by the theory of Darwin. But he was condemned when this thing was there.
Yeah, I mean, looks like they were ready to go beyond this measurement-based
Because
materialistic
they were
science.
original, they were original thinkers. They could study and then observe without any bias, and then they came with that theory of evolution. Very influential thinker, Darwin, actually. And even, of course, Einstein is very influential. We'll read this also. We can finish later on. The next spiritual things will come afterwards.
Okay.
General,
Madhava, what about the Einstein telling about the quantum consciousness?
Einstein was also, I mean, a real spiritualist, a real honest person. He was very surprised of the quantum theory, because as per quantum theory, there is a problem of entanglement. Entanglement, ante suppose a pair of photons are there. If one of the pair of the photon is spinning in one direction, if the other pair is millions of miles away, it will instantly spin. That means it is beyond the speed of light. Also, the communication is happening. That phenomena has to occur if the quantum theory is right. So he was very uncomfortable with that reality. He says God cannot play dice with universe and all, But finally, it was proved right. He died a depressed man because he was not prepared for that unpleasant truth that everything is unity. All of us, all our minds are one mind. All our atoms, bodies which constitute are all one unity. That was the thing which quantum physics talks about, and he was not prepared. Even though he came out with a revolutionary idea that space and time are relative. Even for that honest person, he could not accept the truth that quantum physics cannot be understood by the intellect. Intellect cannot understand reality beyond a certain point, but you can you can be with God, and you can remain in God's consciousness, but with intellect you cannot understand. That's why people have realized when they try to communicate, they have to use language which causes so much of misinterpretations, because out of their compassion they want to make people come out of their delusion of unhappiness. So somehow they have to use language to describe indescribable reality, actually. So that's the problem. That's the problem of spirituality. So if a person is doing meditation properly, is cleaning properly, then he can, then if he listens to Babuji's articles or any spiritual realized person's articles, then intellect is able to get the correct insight, actually. Insight will change your life. Insight will come only when your mind is pure, and mind will become pure if you're practicing correctly, actually.
Right.
Yeah, we can. Obi Parlo, third.
Okay, I'll continue. Third chapter of Philosophies. The love of wisdom has brought forth many philosophies which aim at arriving at the greatest generalized notions regarding man, universe, God, etc. Doubt and logic appear to be the primary weapons of most of the philosophies, especially the Western philosophies. The trouble with those weapons is that they are self injurious. In India, the philosophies which are called darshanas have become almost stereotyped and stagnant. Nevertheless, as Indian philosophies aim at the actual realization of the ultimate reality, with consequent emphasis on a life of practicality, there is much scope for development and breaking of new grounds. The elements of speculation and consequent attempt to fit in all observed facts into a dogmatic theory is a common feature of almost all the philosophies. Metaphysical postulates, whimsically formulated in certain philosophies, have resulted in producing pseudosciences, widely opening the gates for the quacks and charlatans. If only the emphasis were shifted from speculation to practical realization and consequent discipline, the students of philosophies could have ruled the world. thus fulfilling the dream of Plato. If the scientist tries to discover the laws governing the universe, the philosopher attempts to catch hold of the very purpose behind the activity. The scientific discoveries thus provide material for the philosophers to speculate. Many interesting debates have been waged between the scientists and the philosophers, one calling the other as amateur, etc. Nevertheless, the struggle of the human spirit to know everything and to soar high continues. The problems that genuine philosophies try to solve are eternal ones. The methods of analysis and synthesis go on taking different shapes. The authoritative statements of great personalities, the inferential and logical conclusions of great intellectuals, and the unbiased observations of the unblemished seers have been taking the places of importance turn by turn, or even simultaneously. The scholastic developments of philosophies have made them too abstruse to be seriously studied by common men. Consequently, every man or a group of few men started to formulate their own philosophies to cater to their needs of spiritual quest. In India, the materialistic Charvak philosophy came to be known as the philosophy of common man, that is Lokayata, implying thereby a sort of contempt, yet considered serious enough to be studied and criticized. In fact, that has become the negative starting point for every Indian philosophy. Yet it persists even today in one form or another. The problem of man and his material conditioning is the next major unsolved one. Innumerable souls are said to be eternally struggling for emancipation from the quagmire of matter and evolving at every step, only to discover the finer and subtler bondages for their lot, with a fond hope to get rid of ultimate bondage of the ultimate form of matter. In their struggle and desperations, they posited a great soul that is already free from all the bondages of matter and who can help others to get salvation. Probably, it was all a sort of illusion or hallucination self imposed by a god as a play. Or else, let us look to the differences in even material particles and posit different orders of infinites, namely material objects, souls, and God. Each order eternally different from the other, and the members of each order too being radically different from one another. How do you know that this is the shape of the things? It is all written in the holy books. God help us. Next is the problem of dualities like vice and virtue, good and bad, pleasure and pain, determinism and free will, and so on. No amount of philosophizing seems to have solved the problem. The individual versus society has produced many social and political philosophies. The influence of religions has played no less a part in shaping the trends of thought. Many a time, the philosophies had to cater to the needs of the powerful group of people or men in political power. Wars had to be waged to establish peace. Supermen were to be created to remove the dissatisfaction among men. God had to be tailor-made to suit the fancies of people. Renunciation and sacrifices were recommended to enjoy the pleasures of paradise after death. The psychologies, metaphysics, and theories about the truth are also no less important topics for philosophy. If the science and biology is mostly based upon the presumption that the mechanics of human body is almost the same as of any other animal, and that the results obtained from the experiments on other animal hold good for the human beings also, some psychologists are also no less vehement in pursuing the thought that there is little difference between the behaviors of dogs and men. Due to various influences, some psychologies have come to include the self or person in their terminology, but their theories are largely based upon the assumptions that the consciousness of the self is a product or an emergent quality of a particular type of combination of material particles. The soul, as such, is still a taboo to modern psychology. Philosophy, which looks upon science as its handmaids, cannot help implicitly accepting the conclusions of science about life being the product of certain combination of material atoms or molecules, consciousness being an emergent quality, man's evolution being effected from animal ancestry, etc. The fanciful imaginations of such philosophy can function more freely in the realm of metaphysics because science is prohibited from entering into that field. The quest for the ultimate truth has led many philosophies in many directions. If some got stuck up in the definitions of truth, some others vegetated by confusing their fond assumptions with truth. The struggle sometimes went to the extreme situation of defining one undefinable term with yet another undefinable term. Truth is God, or God is truth. Truth is eternal, or that which is eternal is truth. Truth is beauty, and beauty is truth. Ad infinitum. The conception regarding the oneness of truth, different kinds, different orders or degrees of truth, and the consequent instruments of perception and the theories of perceptions have produced many problems of epistemology and logic. In spite of great advancement in philosophic thinking, philosophers find themselves at a loss to help mankind to develop wisdom. Although they claim that knowledge is power, yet they feel quite powerless to help even themselves, much less the mankind. The struggle for the philosopher's stone still continues. Yet another gap in the field of philosophy is between precepts and practice. The heights and refinements of philosophic knowledge have reached such a point, and also the standards and desire based and the standards and desired based conceptions of life have taken such a shape that the precepts of philosophy appear to be entirely irrelevant to the practice. The old Indian folk talk about the precepts being only for preaching and good things of life being for enjoyment appears to hold good even for the philosophies of today as well. The struggle between the desires of the heart and the ideals of mind still continues as strong as ever. At the best, the individual's desire-based needs are cloaked in a generalized philosophy if any philosophic school attempts a compromise. Philosophy immediately absorbs the expressions of the mystics. Yet, due to the fear of the unknown or its own superiority complex, it looks with suspicion or mysticism. Of course, it justifies its suspicion by its main tools of doubt and logic, which the mystic never cares to appreciate. Here, too, some attempts have been made to formulate some philosophies of mysticism. But due to its methodology, such philosophies could never command respectability either from the classical philosophers or from the mystics. If the philosophers refuse to be heart-washed, the mystics refuse to be brainwashed.
Yeah, we'll.
Chapter 4 of Religions.
Yeah, we'll finish this. Yeah.
Yeah. The struggle of religions is too grossly obvious to comment. The origin of any religion of the world can be traced to some great personality who was at once a philosopher and a mystic, and who is intensely craved for the welfare of humanity. When the utterances of such great personalities were written down, classified, codified, and dogmatized, solidity crept into the religions, and it went on increasing in geometric proportions when the vested interest took the reins of religion into their hands. There are some common points in all the religions, like the ideas of God, worship, faith, honesty, etc. But due to the peculiar prejudices developed in every religion, each is different from the others. In fact, the prejudices have affected the religions so much that even the conceptions of God, worship, etc., have been colored by the peculiar brand of any particular religion. The present day position is that each religion is generally identified by its peculiar prejudice. Normally, the struggle in any religion is directed towards maintaining its prejudice and not to get rid of its shackles. The utility of religion really ends when a deep impression is formed on one's mind that there is something else beyond this material world which is to be realized. It is for the individual to go in search of that and do realize that. No amount of social formulations or group prayers can quench the individual's thirst for the infinite. Of course, religion promises the realization of God. But when a seeker starts on the spiritual journey, the institutionalized religion becomes a dead weight for him. And at every step, he comes across one prejudice or another of his religion. Even if he becomes bold, casts away his own religion and takes up another religion, which he considers to be more promising, he is very quickly disillusioned with his new book when he actually starts his quest for higher attainments in the divine knowledge. The, the aim of almost all the religions has been reduced to establish a common brotherhood, even as the political ideologies aim similar wise. If one wants the dictatorship of one clique, the other wants the dictatorship of another clique. Due to rapid growth and quick results of political philosophies, religions have become anachronisms. Therefore, the militant religions have blatantly taken up the political ideologies, and there have grown up groups of people voting for theocratic states. Even among the members of any religious fraternity, jealousies, rivalries, and competition to seize power over their brethren are so apparent as to cause disgust and repulsion. The methods of religions also have degenerated to cause mental stupor or reduce and dupe the faculties of thinking in man. The suggestions of reward and punishment have reduced worship and God to mere mechanical actions and anthropomorphic entity respectively. In the name of peace, dullness is sought for the name of brotherhood of man. Quarreling cliques are formed. In the name of humility, inner grossness is increased, resulting in pride and egoism. There had been saints of caliber who had practiced the method of several religions and came to the conclusion that God, Allah, Hari, Hara, Rama, or Krishna denote the same entity. Attempts had also been made to reconcile the quarrels among the religions by emphasizing the common points or precepts of all the religions. Ironically, enough all these attempts have resulted in the formations of yet more religious sects, once again indulging in the same old quarrels. When one comes across these attempts of reconciliation and unification in the oldest books of even the oldest of religions, a sort of skepticism creeps in, doubting the efficacy of religions as a solution for the problem of man. Those desirous of saving the religions have to rise above them and get command or mastery over the spirit or the essence. Afterwards, they have to introduce the real life in the religion to reorient its struggle to emphasize the need to have the essence as the main point in view, and its ritualistic and prejudicial aspects should be tailored down to suit the times and climes. The lesser the prejudices, healthier the struggle. The lesser the superstitions, the better the growth. But it is hard and uphill task to refine and tailor down the religious things, because politics and social psychology have got vice-like grips on the present-day religions. The religious leaders can't afford to lose their positions, and the people in general won't listen to the exhortations for independent and bold thinking. The only way is to pray to God to help his representatives and his devotees.
Next क्या है?
Spiritual institutions.
टाइम है तो ये भी खत्म कर देंगे. कितना है?
पेज का ही नहीं है.
One and a half. Should I continue?
Yeah, we'll finish this off. Because the next coming ones are very good.
Fifth, chapter 5 of spiritual institutions. Due to disgust against religious persecutions and due to the inner struggles in the soul, some people took bold steps to establish organizations to do prayer and other spiritual practices according to their own thinking and free conscience. Many such institutions were started in secret at first due to the fear of tycoons of religions. Even now, some such institutions have got their secret activities or functions. The secrecy is justified by giving plausible reasons. Due to the elements of prayer and the so-called freedom from the orthodox religious ritualism, they are styled as spiritual organizations. Nevertheless, they too have evolved their own rigid ritualism, and their prayers too are no more than attempts for the fulfillment of their worldly desires. Their struggle is, once again, to maintain their forms and individualities rigidly, even at the cost of their ideals. The secrecy associated with their methods is an effective substitute for the fear and favors of the religions. The basic principle employed is the same kind of brainwashing technique against which the founders of those institutions rebelled. The temptations of promises and simultaneously the idea of impossibility of those promises are the constant causes of the struggle among the members of such institutions. There, too, the cliques in the power devise ways and means to keep the members under their firm grip. When some members, particularly those having the power of money or wisdom, get out of such institutions and either join other institutions or start new ones, the strife and struggle among the institutions degenerate to vulgar levels. Most of such spiritual institutions have stagnated or vegetated to become clubs for social get-together immediately after the passing away of their founders. At the most, they chant or recite or read from the works of their old masters and occasionally enjoy the colorful spiritualism in their group prayers. In fact, there is no struggle in them worth mentioning except the struggle to retain themselves intact. No wonder if some deep thinking members occasionally express their disgust with their own institutions. Still, these spiritual institutions are useful in the sense that they allow enough freedom to their members to take up the path of spirituality with the only condition that the members should swear by the particular brand of those institutions. The theocratic power does not operate in these institutions due to the small number of members in any particular one. Nevertheless, the psychology of a crusader or a fanatic show up sometimes in some member or the other, but normally it is short-lived and it is due to some frustrated desire. The richer institutions try to inflate their coffers by occasional mass social activities, calling them spiritual works. The activities range from grand dinners to eloquent and scholarly public discourses. Some maintain schools, libraries, hostels, hospitals, orphanages, rescue homes, etc. Some preach mass liberation and say that they have nothing to do with the liberation of the individual. Just like the political party, they too consider an individual too insignificant to give any particular attention. It is enough for their members to consider themselves to be belonging to the society which is guaranteed salvation. Such assurance has been given by the founder himself, who in turn has received this promise from God himself. There are again some pseudo-spiritual institutions which have mistaken madness for spirituality, and the members indulge in the use of hallucinogenic drugs or hallucinogenic mental practices based upon intense imaginations. Of course, their activities have to go on secretly or very privately. The men at the top are always busy to devise new and more effective ways of inspiring awe and fear to have more and more power over the common members. The members are quite tamed and docile to swallow anything given by the masters. Sometimes news about their torturous, disgusting, and nauseating activities leak out, and the government of the land is compelled to interfere to check them. Instances are not uncommon where the leaders of such societies have used their members for their own political ends, such as injuring, assaulting, or even murdering their political opponents. Therefore, it is extremely difficult to search for spirituality in the spiritual organizations. Still, one has to search very cautiously as the path of spirituality is said to be like the razor's edge. The struggle must continue, and one should not rest till he starts swimming in the restless, infinite ocean of immortality.
Okay, next कौन सा है बस? The base of Sahaj Marg. We'll read next time this. This is interesting actually.
Yeah.
That is all a prelude. A lot of fresh new ideas are there. There are a lot of practical points, very important points are there. Okay. Any questions or anything so far? I mean, it's general. He spoke about political philosophy, spiritual institutions, sciences, struggle of man.
Philosophies.
So he's preparing a ground to, he's preparing a background to tell about the new system, which he says is a really revolutionary.
Yeah. Many of us has
The
gone through
way he describes the role of an Abhyasi, I mean, it's really amazing actually. But yeah, let us see.
I was saying, I think so many of us has gone through these phases, what we have read,
Yes.
experienced it.
Yeah. His letters are also very good. I mean, like for example, you can just read one letter, Dharmesh, like suppose Bangalore, Bangalore ka ashram opening mein one of his, it was printed in that thing. It was very nice. नहीं नहीं, Call of the Fellow Traveler में पढ़ो. Just take any article, we'll read that. Call of the Fellow Traveler. So about knots and all that is described very well. That information is not there anywhere. Just 2-page article. We'll read one article which will give you a flavor of his thinking actually. Just go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah. We'll just read this Love of Wisdom. Just some article I'm reading.
15.
I'll read this article. So this is an article, one of his articles in the Sahaj Marg Patrika, written by Shri Raghavendra Rao. To aspire to become wise is the natural urge in human beings. Some consider themselves wise and desire to grow still wiser. Some others are fed up with their own wisdom and hanker after some sort of superior or divine wisdom. There is a basic belief that wisdom is the cure of all ills pestering mankind. When desires due to the knot of the heart become the base or the controlling agent of the activity of human thought, the love of wisdom itself becomes one of the innumerable desires. The meaning of wisdom is colored by desires haunting the heart. Sometimes desire is translated as knowledge about the special properties of material objects to use them for comforts or gratification. Some other times it is interpreted as the enlargement of one's awareness or even the development of the faculty of reasoning and logic to tickle or gratify one's own ego or pride. It is universally accepted that wisdom is understood in two ways, namely the worldly wisdom and divine wisdom. When creation started, it was as if a stream of divine energy descended. Up to a certain point of descent, it was one main stream. From there, it branched out into two main streams. Of course, there have been many minor currents as well. Out of the above two branches, one flows downward and other flows toward the right side, tending to take an upward turn. The downward stream probably relates to materialism and solidification, and the right stream is spiritualistic or sublimating. Divine wisdom pertains to the right side stream, and the worldly wisdom probably pertains to the downward stream. It has been the specialty of yogis and sages of India to aspire for divine wisdom. For this, the first requisite prescribed by almost every sage, great sage, is to purify the heart and put a check to its downward tendencies. Divine wisdom dawns upon him who, they say, has rent asunder the knot of his own heart. That means he has cut the knot, Gordian knot, so-called Gordian knot. The point of wisdom is just below from where divine current started to flow downwards. The great yogis have discovered that one desirous of reaching the point of divine wisdom should first make a movement towards right direction, in accordance with that branch of divine stream which flows towards the right side. There are 5 main points in the region of the heart. After completing spiritual journey of these 5 points, each successive point is either towards right side or to an upper level of the preceding point. A pilgrim in the spiritual field enters the sphere of divine wisdom. The divine impulse transmitted by one who has crossed all the points and has entered the divine region greatly helps one desirous of attaining divine wisdom. In fact, such a transmission becomes absolutely essential at higher levels, which are so slippery, it is almost impossible to abide there unaided. To stay in your peaceful mental condition is also difficult. Transmission from a capable and worthy master alone can help to push an aspirant to higher levels. Those having intense love for wisdom are requested to take up the research work in this field of divine wisdom and discover new vistas and possibilities hitherto unknown in this field. One article. I mean, there are several good points are there about how to do prayer effectively. Sometimes we read 2-3 letters of these. They are very important practical points are there.
So here, the movement towards the right direction, right, from
Yeah,
instead
that's
of
what
a heart.
Atman point. That
Atman
is,
point.
so even when like I've been a trainer and um, I was introduced by Kupusami. They just apply a will that some current of the thought is going to the Atman, and then it is as if one river which is flowing towards the ocean has taken almost 180 degrees and traveling back towards the source. I mean, that kind of a miracle happens. How the thought of an ordinary mortal, like a trainer, when he gives a suggestion, how the whole tendencies which are going downwards are turned towards God is simply a miracle which Babuji himself says, I cannot explain it, how it happens. I mean, it's all just God's will, that thing happens, and then the tendencies The flow is as if it is directed 180 degrees. Instead of going into the ocean, it's going back to the source. How that happens, it's all the will of God. It's a mystery which happens. And it is only Babuji knows how it is capable of doing that kind of a miracle when he can turn the tendencies of the mind towards God. So that's the thing. I mean, when it moves towards, from the heart towards the Atman point, from there it starts moving up. The thought itself, it doesn't mean the same thought, it instead of going down, it twists itself and starts moving through the thought. The soul, through the thought, it starts moving towards the destination. It's a real miracle which is happening. I've seen this miracle happening continuously. If you read some of his Babuji, he says it's a difficult point to explain, he says. But that impulse should come from a person who is totally absorbed in God. Then only it will work. A person, that means the preceptor should be the most sincere abhyasi who is constantly striving to move towards the source and then get established in the source. He should abide in God consciousness always. Then it works well. Anyway, we'll meet next time. If any questions are there, we can ask.
Doesn't look like.
In that article, Panoramic View, he talks about the role of the preceptors. There, he covers so many points actually. How the preceptor works also he writes very nicely. If not, we'll meet again then next Sunday.